Okay, right. Then another thing is your what they call the chanting box is off,
No, it's off.
Off,
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, okay. Back to you. So everyone, enjoy your class. Hare Krishna. Dandavad Pranam.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Can you all see the slides?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
Hare
can
Krishna.
Okay.
Yes, can see the slide.
Can see.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I'm sorry for the delay because there was a jam near my area with all these Pongal stalls. So I'm sorry about that. So first we'll start with our Mangalacharan. Majnana Timirandasya, Yananjana Shalakaya, Chakshuru Minatam Yena, Tasmai Sri Guraya Nama, Sri Chaitanya Mano Visham, Tapitam Yena Bhutali, Swayam Rupagara Mayam, Dadati Swapadantikam, Vande Aham Sri Guru Sri Vitapatakalam, Sri Gurun Vaishnavamsya, Sri Rupam Sagrajatam, Sagana Radnatan Vidam Samsa Jivam, Sadvaitam Savadutam, Varjana Saitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Sri Radha Krishna Padan, Sagana Vishakarnitamsya, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpade, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namaste, Tapta Kanchana Gauraji, Radhivunda Amneshwari, Rishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Haripe, Panchakalpa Dubeta,
ரொம்ப வெளியே வருதுமா இல்ல இது கிட்ட அப்ப வெளியே நடக்கிறத சீ மடிச்சு
Priya Dvaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavita, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Thanks to all the online participants for attending today's session. And also we have two devotees in our center. So one Prabhu and Mataji. Without further ado, I'll continue with today's session. So today's session is titled Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam, meaning the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. So first of all, last week we saw why we are caught in this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. We originally, as Krishna said, we are originally his eternal fragmental parts. So originally that was our Swarupa, but we fell to this material world and we lost our spiritual body and we got this material body and we are suffering in this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease because of our desire to be Purusha and Ishvara, as we discussed last week. So apart from that, we know that we are suffering in this repeated cycle. So why do we have to perceive this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease as evil? Like the title is the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. So why do we have to perceive it as evil? Anyone wants to answer? Why do we have to perceive birth, death, old age, disease as evil? Why do we perceive this repeated cycle as evil? The answer is very simple. It's on the slide. So anyone? I don't know. Why do we perceive the cycle as evil?
Prabhu, maybe our karma, what?
Pardon?
Karma?
No. No need to be very philosophical. The answer is there on the slide.
Because we know Krishna.
Pardon?
Because we not surrender to Krishna, Prabhu.
Okay, quite close, but it's okay. I'll just tell the answer. We must perceive the repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease as evil simply because Krishna said so. Simple. Krishna said that he has mentioned Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam in Gita 13.9. This is from chapter 13. So here Krishna actually mentions that this cycle is evil, like we are trapped in an evil cycle, Dukkha Dosha Anudarshanam. So this cycle is full of distress and fault, Dukkha Dosha, and we must observe it as it is. Like we have to realize that it is an evil cycle. So that's what Krishna said in 13.9. So first we'll just have a very brief view of chapter 13, just to see how the conversation came up to that point, where Krishna says, where Krishna mentions Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. We'll just see how the conversation came to that point. So first, chapter 13 is titled Kshetratna Vibhaga Yoga, meaning nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. So it's a very interesting chapter, like all the other chapters also. But as we can see in other chapters also, the chapter starts with Arjuna's query. Arjuna starts the chapter with his wish list. He gives a list to Krishna and he says, okay, Krishna, I wish to know about all these topics. Arjuna Vacha, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva, Kshetram Kshetrajna Evacha, Etad Vesu Michami, Jnanam Jnayam Chakesava. Arjuna said, oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field, and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge. So here, at the beginning of the chapter itself, Arjuna is giving Krishna his wish list that he wants to know about these 6 items. So this chapter basically deals with these 6 items, which are described in depth by Krishna. So in the second verse itself, Krishna doesn't waste time. He goes straight to the point. He begins by describing about Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Idam Shariram Kaunteya, Kshetram Ti Abhidiyate, Etad Yoveti Tam Prabhu, Kshetrajna Iti Tat Vida. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, this body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. So we all have our material body, and our material body is the field. And within our material body is our individual soul, our Jivatma. We are all Jivatmas embodied in this material body. So our material body is called the field, and we all know our individual bodies. The Jivatma within myself knows about my body. I don't know about other people's body. I don't know about other people's field. Then Krishna continues. I'll go verse by verse here until verse 13.9, just to show how the conversation led to that point, how it came up to that point. So in the next verse, Krishna says, "O son of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge." That is my opinion. So here Krishna says that the Paramatma is also the knower in all bodies. So in the previous verse, you saw that Jivatma is the knower of his own body. He only knows about his Kshetra, his field. But Krishna being the Paramatma, the same Paramatma who resides in all the bodies of all living entities, knows what is going on in all the fields. So Krishna says that to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. So first, when we realize that we are spirit souls, when we realize about our individual identity, that is just the first starting point. Then we also must realize about the knower in all bodies. We also must realize about the Paramatma. Then that's how we really we can really acquire complete knowledge. Then in verse 13.4, 13.5, Krishna gives much more in-depth explanation. Like in 13.4, we can see the keywords, like the 5 W1H kind of keywords. Krishna provides explanation based on all sorts of aspects to give complete explanation to Arjuna. And then even in 13.5, we can see that Krishna being the supreme spiritual master, all knowledge originates from Krishna. But still, as a spiritual master on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he is showing an example like how a spiritual master should behave. When a spiritual master imparts knowledge to his disciple, the spiritual master should convey the parampara knowledge with references from bona fide sources. So Krishna himself is saying, though he is the origin of all the knowledge, he is saying that all this knowledge has been described by various sages in various Vedic writings. So he is providing authentic references to whatever he's saying. And then here in these two verses is like more in-depth explanation regarding the field, Kshetra. Mostly up to this point, the conversation is still about Kshetra and Kshetrajna. We saw that in the first verse, Arjuna said that he wants to know about Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Nyayam. So up to this point, Krishna has been focusing on Kshetra and Kshetrajna. And here in this verse, actually, this is not one verse, but it's like 5 verses combined together. Actually, in the book, we'll find the 5 verses, the 5 individual verses in the original Devanagari version. It's like 13.8, 13.9, 10, 11, and 12. So the original verses are separate, but Prabhupada has combined the translation and also the purport as one because it deals with one main topic. So here Krishna gives a long list of aspects related to knowledge because Arjuna wanted to know about Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Nyayam. He wanted to know about Jnana, knowledge, and also the object of knowledge, Nyayam. So here in these 5 verses, Krishna's focus is about knowledge, Jnanam. So first, he begins with the humility, pridelessness, non-violence, and right up to a certain point, Krishna mentions the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. This is the main topic for today. Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanam Darshanam. So these words were spoken by Krishna. He says that one who is able to perceive the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, if only such a person is in knowledge. So first, when we begin our spiritual inquiry and we begin to develop God consciousness, we begin from the point of humility. First, we need to have humility, then pridelessness, then we must practice non-violence, like no meat eating, then tolerance. So these are all different levels of how we should develop our knowledge. So Krishna gives the long list, and then towards the end he says, all these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So regardless of how many academic degrees we acquire, if we are not enlightened about all these aspects, according to Krishna, we are in ignorance. So that's why it is very important for us to perceive the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease as evil, according to Krishna. And then even in the purport, as I said earlier, Prabhupada has combined the 5 verses, the translation and the purport of the 5 verses as one. But I'll just focus on this one paragraph, which is related to Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. So if we look at the complete purport, Prabhupada gives one paragraph explanation for each aspect. Like the purport begins with the first paragraph deals with humility and pridelessness. So Prabhupada gives very detailed explanation about each of these aspects. So when it comes to the paragraph regarding Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, Prabhupada says in his purport, one should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother. We do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of suffering, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed, and as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased, and no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distress of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. So if we generally, if we talk to non-devotees, and if we touch on these subjects of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, non-devotees might generally look at us that we are being very pessimistic, very negative about everything. We don't have a positive outlook about life and all that. But no matter how much we try to deny these four aspects, these are sure to happen to anybody. And the worst part is that, like regarding death, old age, disease, of course, from the moment we are born, we are aging every moment, that we know, but still we are not willing to accept that. And regarding disease and death also, it's so uncertain, but still we are trying to avoid spiritual inquiry and trying to have this we are just trying to put up a show that about having positive outlook of life by ignoring all these aspects. We are so engrossed in this material life that we don't we prefer not to develop spiritual inquiry. So that is also, as Krishna has said in the Gita, we are a lot of people are suffering from that disease of being unable to do spiritual inquiry because we are under illusion. We are under the three modes of material nature, and we are in Maya. So that's why we are unable to see these things, and we are unable to see the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. So that's from the purport. I mean, this paragraph is regarding only this aspect of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. And then if you look at the conclusion of the purport, the last paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada says, beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the supreme truth, the absolute personality of Godhead. This process is just like a staircase, beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now on this staircase, there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second or third floor, etc. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks I am God because of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth. So as we saw last week, we can never escape from Krishna's control because, as mentioned in Brahma Samhita by Lord Brahma himself, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Krishna is the supreme controller. So, no matter what, we can never escape from his control. if we surrender to Krishna and go to Goloka, we will be under his spiritual energy. Since we desire to be Ishvara and Purusha ourselves, we are trapped in this material world and we are still under his external energy. We are still under his material energy, and therefore a lot of people, they have this misconception that okay, I'm God, everyone is God. And then people also try to define God according to their own definitions. They say that, okay, if God is merciful, then why does he do this? Why does he do that? They always try to set the criteria about who should be God. The proper way to understand who is God is by studying the scriptures. We have to scrutinizingly study the scriptures. But due to our obsession about being Ishvara and Purusha, like we want to be enjoyers and controllers, we also try to control the definition of God himself. We try to create definitions of God without studying the scriptures. So that would be the perfect being towards acquiring spiritual knowledge, because as Prabhupada says, beginning from practicing humility, the very first step is to practice humility, and then realization of the supreme truth is the final stage. So as long as we are under illusion, and if we try to define who is God, God should do this, God should do that, there's no humility in that. So for such people, it will be very difficult to make spiritual advancement. But if they study, even they simply study Prabhupada's purpose, it's very easy to understand. Like first, we begin by practicing humility, and then everything will become very easy. And I think I have shared this earlier in the previous class also. I just want to share it again regarding this telephone company ad. So this is the beauty of Prabhupada. Like Krishna himself has mentioned that we have to observe the evil, we have to perceive the evil of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. Then Krishna has mentioned that in the Gita, and being the being a true spiritual master, Prabhupada always thinks about how to convey Krishna's message to all the unfortunate Kali Jivas. Even when Prabhupada saw a random telephone company ad, he was trying to think how to convey the message. In one of his lectures, this lecture was in LA on July 4th, 1971. So Prabhupada says, this morning I was seeing one advertisement, telephone company. They are advertising, if you have any problem, do not hesitate to call us. So I've underlined the word any here, because Prabhupada was also being sarcastic about this ad based on the word any. Therefore, I was advising our secretary that why don't you ask the telephone company? I've got this problem, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. I've got the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. Can you help me? So since the telephone company advertised, if you have any problem, don't hesitate to call us. So according to Srila Prabhupada, the main problem that we all should focus in our life is the problem of repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. So Krishna has mentioned it in the Gita, and Prabhupada was always obsessed with conveying this message to all the Kali Jivas throughout his life. So this is the sign of the true spiritual master, the Mahabhagavat. Then Prabhupada says, then they should be informed that if you have no information for solving this problem, then please send all men who are inquisitive about these 4 problems to us, to ISKCON. We shall solve it. That's a fact. It's not a humbug promise. It is a fact. This Krishna consciousness movement is meant for giving the human society a solution for these 4 problems, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. It is not that we have manufactured this idea. It is the statement of Krishna. So even Prabhupada also provides authentic reference based on the Gita to his statements. He does not manufacture his own teachings. So just by looking at a random phone company ad, even that was used by Srila Prabhupada to convey the message. So this is why we should always approach a spiritual master who comes from a bona fide parampara. Like we know, the ISKCON movement is belongs to the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, and Srila Prabhupada has always been focused on conveying the message as it is. That's why he even titled his version of the Bhagavad Gita as Bhagavad Gita as it is. So, in order to acquire true knowledge, the first step is to approach a spiritual master who comes from a bona fide parampara. And for us, simply by joining ISKCON, we are assured to join a bona fide parampara. And of course, there are a lot of people who say that they are self-taught in all these scriptures, so they can talk about it, but that's all nonsense, because even in the Gita itself, it is said that Krishna himself says in 4.34, Tad Viddhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevya Upadekshanti Te Jnanam Jnanas Tattva Darshinaha. Krishna himself says that if you want to know the truth, approach a spiritual master. So those who say that, yeah, I've learned the Gita on my own, self-taught and all that, so that's utter nonsense. It's best to ignore such bogus gurus. So first, there are four main aspects in our discussion today. So the first one is regarding birth. If we have noticed in our Gaudiya Vaishnava calendar, very often we use this word, like for Krishna Janmashtami, we use the word appearance of Lord Krishna. The birthday of Lord Krishna is called appearance day, but for us, it is called birth. So what is the difference between the two? So as we know, like in the Brahma Samhita also, it's stated, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. So Krishna has this Satchidananda Vigraha. Here his form is spiritual. So he has this spiritual body, and even when he descends to the material world, he descends with his material, his spiritual body. So his spiritual body is not like our material body, which is subject to death, old age, and disease. If we study the Krishna book, it is stated that Krishna lived in this material world for 125 years. But even towards the end of his life, at the age of 125, he was just looking like a youth, like a normal youth. He was not looking like a 125-year-old man. Even with grandchildren, he was looking like a youth. So that is the difference between someone who appears with a spiritual body, and that's why he is the supreme controller. But we, as conditioned soul, like I mentioned in the last class, as conditioned souls, we are all wannabe controllers. So we think that we all generally come up with these nonsensical statements that I'm God, you are God, everyone is God. So of course, that is part of being a conditioned soul. So that is the difference between birth and appearance. We take up our material body, like even now we got this human form, this material body, after quitting from another body. Even after, at the end of this life, we are going to quit this human form of a material body, and we might get another material body, or we might regain our spiritual body. It all depends on our sadhana in this life. But we can also see from the Gita, like in 2.20, Na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuya ajo nitya shashvatayam puranam na hanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So in chapter 2, when Krishna is mainly in chapter 2, Krishna is trying to distinguish between the material body and the soul to convince Arjuna to do his duty. So here it is stated that for the soul there is neither birth nor death. So when we are born in this material world, we are simply taking up different material bodies. When we are said to be born, we get a new material body, and when we die, actually we are quitting our current material body, and we might be getting a new material body according to the 84 lakh species. So that's why in 2.22 it is said, Vasamsi jirnani yata vyaya navani grinati naro parani tata sharirani vyaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So the process of the transmigration of the soul, since the soul is not born, nor does it die. So during the transmigration of the soul, is the process is equated to the process of putting on new garments and giving up the old ones. So birth is actually referring to the material body. And since Krishna appeared with his spiritual body, that's why we say appearance day. And not just for the transmigration of the soul, like transmigrating from one body to another body, even within the same body, also this single material body also changes every moment, like stated in 2.13. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tata deyantra praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So, not just changing of bodies, but even this single body, since birth, even this body keeps changing every moment until death. So that is how fragile this material body is. But Krishna did not appear in this world with a material body. He came with his spiritual body. That's why in 4.9 he says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvata jaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So if you look at the translation of this verse also, it is stated transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. For Krishna, it is appearance. But when he refers to the living entities, he uses the word upon leaving the body, does not take his birth again in this material world. So for living entities, being caught in this material world means birth. But for Krishna, it is appearance. And there is a reason why Krishna mentions his appearance and activities are transcendental. Because when he appeared, he also appeared showing his 400 forms in front of his parents. And that is why Krishna is Ishvara. So again, that's why it's important to understand Krishna according to scriptures and not based on our own manufactured ideas. Like those who claim to be God, they must also explain about their transcendental activities. So, has anyone lifted a mountain during your childhood? Has anyone done that? Because there are people who say, I'm God, you are God, everyone is God. So such people, have they lifted any mountain during their childhood? Or did they destroy any cart when they were still less than 1 month old? No, nobody can claim that. But Krishna has done all such transcendental activities. That's why he says, Janma karma chame divyam. So we saw the difference between birth and appearance, and that itself shows how fragile our material bodies are, and how that we are trapped in this such a helpless condition. So it is not surprising, because when we are caught in this material world, we are part of this 14 planetary system, in which we are in the middle planet now. The topmost living entity who was first created in this material world was Lord Brahma. He resides in his abode in Satyaloka, the topmost planet in this material world. But the truth is that even he is subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. Even he has to die once his lifetime is over. So what is there to speak of us? So that's why Krishna clearly says, after attaining me, the great Sikh never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries, because they have attained perfection. Krishna says that this material world is full of miseries. Dukkalayam ashashvatam. Then he also says in 8:16, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of repeated birth and death take place. Never takes birth again. So Krishna also says in 8:16 that all the 14 planetary systems in the material world, from the highest down to the lowest, all are places of misery, where repeated birth and death take place. Meaning that even the topmost living entity, Lord Brahma, is subject to birth and death. So that's why it is very important to get out of this cycle of this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. If not, as long as we don't get out of this cycle, we are going to be moving up and down these 14 planetary systems. And then there are some very important verses also from 8:17 to 8:19 mentioning about the lifetime of Lord Brahma. So I specifically want to focus on this, because by looking at the topmost living entity, who is Lord Brahma, in the material world, he is the topmost living entity. So by looking at him, we can easily judge how helpless are we in this material world. So in 8:17, it stated, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aryat Brahmano Vidu Asrim Yuga Sahasrantam Deho Ratra Vido Jana. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma one day, and such also is the duration of his night. So if we look at this verse, and also the purport in 8:17 in the book Bhagavad Gita as it is, so the purport contains the explanation for all the calculation related to this. Then in 8:18 it stated, Avyaktat Yaktaya Sarva Prabhavanti Ar Agami Ratri Agami Praliyante Tatrahi Yakta Samnake. At the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest on the unmanifest state. And thereafter, when the night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. So the material creation remains until Brahma's death. But throughout that period, there are many cycles during which the creation becomes manifest and then unmanifest, manifest and then unmanifest, according to how Brahma from daytime to daytime. During those stages, are destroyed and then recreated for many cycles. But Brahma remains until he's towards the end of his life. Then in 8:19 stated Bhuta Gramasa Evayam Bhupa Bhuta Praliyati Rati Agami Avasha Prata Prabhavati Ar Agami. Again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. So that is our helpless condition, as long as we are trapped in this material world. So this is the calculation related to the lifespan of Brahma. This calculation is in human years. So there are 4 yugas, as we know, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. and we can actually ignore the third column, the rightmost column, and we just have to remember the length of Kali Yuga, 432K, meaning 432,000 human years. So simply by remembering the duration of Kali Yuga, that is 432,000 years, we can we know the total duration for the Chatur Yuga, meaning the total cycle of the 4 Yugas. Because Kali Yuga is just one Kali Yuga, 1 times 432,000. For Dwapara Yuga, it's times 2, Treta Yuga times 3, and Satya Yuga times 4. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 10. So the total duration of Chatur Yuga is simply 10 times 432,000, which is 4.32 million. So based on the explanation which can be found in the purport for 8.78, we can calculate the lifespan of Brahma. 1 day of Brahma is equal to 1,000 Chatur Yugas. Here, the day of Brahma is actually, it refers to the daytime of Brahma, like 12, the first half, like the 12 hours of Brahma. So 1,000 Chatur Yugas, meaning 1,000 times 4.32 million human years. That is 4.32 billion human years. And the same duration is for his nighttime also. So 1 full day of Brahma is equal to 8.64 billion years. So Brahma lived for 100 years, and each year consists of 360 days. So the total lifespan of Brahma is 311 trillion and 40 billion human years. This is in terms of human years. So compared to, even if we live up to 100 years, so this is a very long period of time for the lifespan of Brahma. But the sad fact is that even after this 311 trillion years, even Brahma has to die. And the calculation of Chatur Yuga can also be expressed in demigod years. So here, earlier we saw that the factor in human years was 432,000. Now the factor in demigod years is 1,200. For Kali Yuga, it's 1,200 years. And so it's the same for other Yugas also. So the total duration for Chatur Yugas in demigod years is 12,000 demigod years. So we can actually compare the lifespan of Brahma, demigods, and human beings. As we saw in the 14 planetary systems, Brahma resides in Satyaloka, the topmost planet in the material world. Even Swargaloka is below Brahma. So all the demigods reside in the upper planetary systems, which are above Earth. The upper planetary systems are above Earth, above the Earth planet, but still below Satyaloka. So the demigods are also not, we cannot really say that their position is actually very glorious, because even Brahma dies after 311 trillion years. So the demigods have a much shorter lifespan. So as we saw now, 1 Chatur Yuga in human years is 4.32 million human years. The same 1 Chatur Yuga is actually equal to 12,000 demigod years. So 1 demigod year is equal to 360 human years. So the total lifespan of demigods also get 100 years, but it is according to their calculation, according to the demigod calendar. Brahma has a different calendar and demigods have a different calendar. So the total lifespan of demigods is 100 years times 360 human years. So the lifespan of demigods is 36,000 human years. We get 100 human years. It was supposed to be 100 human years in Kali Yuga, but as we know, hardly anyone gets to live until that point. So we can clearly see just how helpless are we in this material world, being trapped in this vicious cycle. So we just saw the aspect of birth, appearance. So next, the second aspect is regarding death. So the entire essence of this Krishna consciousness movement, to why should we develop Krishna consciousness, is The reason is stated in 8.5. Antakalesha mamevas mukva kalevaram ya prayati samatvavam yati nashtayata samsayam. Krishna says, and whoever at the end of his life, which his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this, there is no doubt. So, Krishna says that the repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease is evil. He wants us to realize that we are trapped in an evil cycle. So, he wants us to break free from this cycle. And he also tells us how to do it. So, he tells us, just by remembering me at the time of quitting the body, you can attain my nature, meaning we can go to Goloka by remembering Krishna at the time of death. But how are we supposed to remember Krishna at the time of death if we don't practice remembering him during our lifetime? So that is the point behind developing Krishna consciousness. To be conscious of Krishna throughout our lifetime is extremely crucial to be conscious of him when we leave our body. I have heard from many other Shiksha gurus. I've attended many other online courses. So a lot of people have said this regarding a verse from Garuda Puran. It is stated that when we quit our body at the time of death, we will be experiencing a certain kind of pain, which can be described as something like 40,000 scorpions biting us at the same time. Will be experiencing such kind of pain when we are quitting our body. Actually, some people say it's 40,000, some people say 100, some people say 1,000, but it doesn't matter because we cannot even imagine the pain of being bitten by one scorpion. So just even if it's 100 scorpions biting at the same time, the pain is unimaginable. So how to remember Krishna at that time when we are under such pain if we don't practice remembering him when we are alive? So that's why it's very important to practice Krishna consciousness from the early stage itself and not wait until retirement. We don't have to wait for until we are free after retirement to do this because it's extremely crucial. We don't know when death is going to stare us at our face. It can happen at any moment. The sad fact is that a lot of people refuse to acknowledge this. And then in the next verse also, Krishna says, Yam yam vapi swaran bhavan tedati ante kalevaram samtamevaiti kaunteya sadatat bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without faith. As Krishna says that we are originally his eternal fragmental parts. We, in order to regain our spiritual identity, our spiritual body, we have to remember Krishna, we have to remember Goloka so that we can attain that supreme destination. And there are many examples which prove the truth of this verse. Like, for example, Jada Bharat. Jada Bharat was actually born as, he was Maharaj Bharat, who followed all the proper ashramas throughout his life. He lived as a king, but towards his old age, he took up spirituality and he lived as a sage. But he came across this baby deer, and he, during the rest of his life, though he was engaged in spirituality, he kind of developed an attachment to this baby deer. So when he quit his body, he was so attached and he was remembering this deer when he quit his body, and as a result, he was born again as a deer. And then after his life as a deer, he was born again as Jada Bharat. So here we can clearly say that one small mistake at the time of quitting our body will cost us, will make us repeat our birth again. So that's why it's very important to intensify our sadhana so that we don't make any mistakes at the crucial moment. Okay, on one hand, we saw Maharaj Bharat, and on the other hand, we have a completely opposite example, Ajami. Though he was born as a Brahmin, he lived properly in a Brahmin family and he was even married. But one day when he saw this prostitute, he fell for her. He abandoned his beautiful wife and he went after this prostitute, married that prostitute, and then he lived as a thief. He did all kind of he engaged in all kinds of sinful behavior, even up to the point of having a child when he was above 70 years old. So when he was very sick, and at that time when death was approaching him, he saw Yamadutas, and he was out of fear. He was calling out his youngest son, who was named after Narayana. So he was a very sinful person, and Yamadutas were approaching him to capture him. But at that time, out of fear, he was calling out to his youngest son, Narayana. So he was shouting, Narayana, Narayana. But at that time, Vishnudutas came, because though Ajamil was uttering the name of Narayana indirectly, still he benefited out of that at that crucial moment. So Vishnudutas rescued him, and then he got a second chance to go back to Godhead. So here, from these two examples, we can see how important it is to remember Krishna at that crucial moment, regardless of how much sadhana we do during our lifetime. That crucial moment, that final moment, is very, very important. So we have seen about the aspect of death. Now regarding old age. So here also we have very interesting examples, like Dhritarashtra was living with the Pandavas after the war. He actually lost all his sons, and then even after that he was living with the Pandavas in the palace at a very advanced age. So by right during ancient times, or even now also, at an advanced age, we should give up all material opulence and live a very simple life and intensify our spiritual inquiry. But Dhritarashtra was not interested in any of that. He still wanted to live in the palace and bathe in all the material opulence, even when it meant that he was living with the Pandavas at their mercy in some ways. So at one point, when Vidura came to visit him, Vidura used extremely nasty words to describe the condition of Dhritarashtra, to make him realize that he's living at the mercy of Pandavas, like he's living like a pet dog who is eating the remnants of Bhima's food. So all these were said by Vidura to make Dhritarashtra quit the palace immediately. So after that, Dhritarashtra left the palace and went to the forest. And after that, after some time, both he and his wife died in the forest fire. So towards old age, it is very, very important to take up spirituality, but it doesn't really mean that we only have to think about spirituality during our old age, because death can come to us at any moment. So it's not that we have to study the Gita or take up spirituality only during our old age. We don't even know whether we are going to be alive during our old age. So on one hand, we have the example of the Dhritarashtra, and on the other hand, we have the example of Prahlad Maharaj, a great exalted devotee who was preaching the importance of bhakti to his young friends. He was saying that even at a young age, we all must seriously consider engaging in bhakti, because even if we have 100 years to live, and suppose if we spend 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours per day for sleeping, that will be like a quarter to 1/3 will be gone just for sleeping. That is also if we get 100 years to live. But nowadays it's a very big question mark whether we can even cross the age of 50. That itself would be a huge mercy of God. So it's not that only old people. This is a very huge misconception in our community, where people think that we have to study the Gita only after retirement. We can take up bhakti after retirement. So all these are nonsense, because that can happen at any moment. So it is best to cultivate our kids from the young age itself. Like in other faiths, we can see that in other communities, they always send their kids for religious education from a very young age itself. But only in our community, we don't do it the proper way. We always prefer to study the Bhagavad Gita based on WhatsApp messages, and we also always focus on exploring spirituality by watching TV serials. So it's very sad, but that is the truth. And now we have come to the final aspect in today's discussion regarding disease. So I intentionally created just this one slide, a very simple slide regarding disease, because I don't think I have to explain too detailed regarding this. In a lot of developing nations, they have this vision document, like to become a developed nation by 2020. So it was all focused on gaining material opulence, material development by the year 2020. But we all know what happened on that year. So not just developing nations, even developed nations, the fast of their economic development and all the material development were all completely exposed when the pandemic happened, and people were like, well, though people may not like to acknowledge the fact, that's what happened. And I don't think I really have to elaborate more on this. So this is why we have to consider how evil is this vicious cycle of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. Now, some so-called intellectuals might ask, okay, if Krishna is so merciful, why does he want us to suffer? Why does he put us in this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease? Why does he make us suffer in this material world? Why can't he make us simply enjoy? Okay, so Krishna himself acknowledges in chapter 7, in 7.15 and 7.16, he distinguishes between two categories of people, Duskritis and Sukirtis. In 7.15, Krishna says, Namam Duskritno Muda Prapatyante Naradama Maya Patanyana Ashram Bhavamashita. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. And then in the next verse, he talks about Sukirtis. Chaturvida Bhajanti Ma Jana Sukirtan Arjuna Arto Jitna Suratati Jnanicha Bhaltar Sabha. O best among the Bhartas, four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me. The distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. So the so-called self-proclaimed intellectuals who claim to be atheists, but who only target one religion, they always ask questions like, why Krishna does this, why Krishna does that, why doesn't he do this, why doesn't he do that? So that's why such people are described as grossly foolish, because their tendency to be controllers is so strong that in this material world, the tendency to be a controller is so strong that we tend to define who is God. We are not willing to accept him as he is. We tend to define that he should do this, he should do that, only then I will accept. So the tendency for us to lord over everything is so intense. So such people are described as Duskritis in 7.15. Only those who surrender to Krishna, the Sukirtis, only they have some hope about being liberated from this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. Others who always tend to set criteria of how Krishna should behave, they have the choice of being stuck in the material world, taking up different material bodies in the 84 lakh species. So it's entirely up to them. Now, just because Krishna has distinguished between the two categories of people, again, the so-called intellectuals might say, oh, see, Krishna is discriminating. He is discriminating between the two types of people. Why doesn't he love everyone? For that also, Krishna clarifies in 4.11, as all surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Buddha. Krishna reciprocates to everyone according to how we behave with him. If we surrender completely to him, he rewards us accordingly. Even in 9.29, Krishna says, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. So Krishna is not partial, he is impartial, he is equal to everyone, but he does not interfere in the individual decision making of living entities. Those who claim to be intellectuals, those who want to set criteria to define God without studying the scriptures, they are free to do as they wish, and they will get what they deserve. So even in 7.14, Krishna says, Daivihesha Gunamayi Mamamaya Duratya Ma Mevaye Prabhadyante Maya Metam Tarante. This divine energy of mind, consisting of three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who are surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Krishna also acknowledges that the power of his Maya is extremely strong. So that is what is stopping us from crossing this ocean of material existence. But he says that those who surrender unto me can easily cross the ocean of material existence. So he is giving the simple solution to solve the problem. Just surrender unto me. Even in 18.66, Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Paljajya Mamekam Sharanam Praja. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mocheshami Masucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So again and again, Krishna says that the simple solution is to surrender unto him. We who are deluded by Maya, we who are in illusion, we refuse to accept that part of the statement where he says, Ma Mekam Saranam. We refuse to surrender unto him, but we want him to be our order supplier. We want him to forgive all our sins, and we simply tell him, okay, I will do as I wish. I want to enjoy myself, but you just have to fulfill all my desires. I'm not going to listen to you. I won't surrender to you. If you are God, you do as I wish. So this is the extremely intense propensity of becoming a controller in the material world. We end up being Mudas, but it's an individual choice. Those who claim to be intellectuals and atheists, they are free to do as they wish, and they'll get what they deserve. But for devotees, the only solution to escape from this repeated cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease is to practice Krishna consciousness so that we can go to Golaka, back to Godhead. So that's all from me today, and thank you very much for your patient listening. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Such a wonderful session. So how everyone, do you like the session?
Yes, Prabhu.
So kudos to Dr. Dinesh. He have presented it in a very scientific way in a short period of time of 1 hour, 1.5 hours. He presented every detail about on the matter of this vicious cycle of repeated birth and death. Right. So like this, we're going to have more and more session every Saturday. Dr. Dinesh will be doing his program, whereby he always summarize the entire thing and keep it in such a way that it is easily understandable, at the same time easy to refer. Okay, this video will be uploaded into this YouTube channel, our ISKCON Ipoh YouTube channel. So if those who have not subscribed, please subscribe. So once we have 100 subscription minimum, we can do live trending. All right. So other than that, so we have also a program every Tuesday and every Thursday. And Monday, on Monday, we will have a session with what they call Madhura Mohan Prabhu. He'll be presenting the Bhagavad Gita from chapter 1. He's going chapter by chapter. All right. So till then, thank you so much. Do you have any questions or any comment? You can ask Dr. Dinesh now. Okay. So I think there's no questions, no comments.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dineshwaran. You have done a fantastic job. Hare Krishna. And to everyone, happy Pongal.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Hare Krishna.